Hello again, Struckwap. I'm bringing you another build video today for Warhammer Chaosbane, and this is yet another 2-in-1 video and yet another rework of a previous build. So this is Holy Justice 3.0, a soldier build for Konrad Vollen, the Empire soldier, and as I mentioned, it's gonna include two different setups for the skills and god skills based on whether you wanna play it more standardized, like regular setup as I call it, similar to my Holy Justice 1.0 and the Holy Justice 2.0, the previous setups. Both setups are using the Thrice-Blessed Copper medal to heal when using god skills, and since the developers finally fixed it so that the pew-pew-pew beams of Sigmar Bastion can heal us, it is pretty nice and pretty strong. Now the other setup I'm using, which we're gonna see in a few seconds, is kind of a weird build, hashtag weird build crew setup, where you wanna use 3 god skills. I've reworked the skills so that we can use Sigmar's Herald, which taunts the enemies and does damage to those enemies nearby, and then I've added a passive that lets us do more damage to taunted enemies, just to kind of synergize it a bit. So as you see now, that's this setup. The differences in the damage are not that big, so I think each setup is just based on what you wanna be playing. If you wanna be playing something that's a bit more mobile, I would suggest the regular setup, because this one does not have break through the ranks. Maybe break through the ranks could be obtainable if I get rid of some things, such as for example my basic attack skill, because with this setup I had spare points, so I could probably put one of the god skills, or maybe I could put Holy Justice on my left mouse button and then squeeze in break through the ranks. For that setup, I forgot to tell you this when talking about the skills. I mentioned other options, how to spend those extra points, and those options you would see shortly afterwards. First I decided this time to show you the god skill setups and then the skill setups. Normally I do the opposite. And here's the god skills for the first setup, the more standard setup that doesn't really change that much from what I was using in the first and second versions of the Holy Justice build. On this side we are grabbing Divine Judgment, and on the way we are grabbing Sigmar's Blessing and the mastered version, but we're only using the basic because we don't have enough points to use the mastered. Then we're forking off over this side to get a total of 50 crit damage and 8 damage percent, then another 50 crit damage and 8 damage percent here. On the other side we're stopping at Blessings of the Brave, and on the way we are picking up Sigmar's Bastion Mastered. This is for crit chance and crit damage, and also to heal with the pew-pew-pew beams while using a Thrice-Blessed Copper medal. And this, as you can see, gives us crit chance and crit damage based on our block chance and block damage, but it also reduces the block chance and block damage to balance things out. Simple, straightforward, and familiar to the previous setups I've been using, except I don't have those points here anymore. And you can see the cooldown reduction is pretty great now after the changes, 33% cooldown with this setup, slightly less with the other setup that I'm gonna show you next. And that's pretty much it for the god skills. For this, let's show you the next setup. And here's the god skills for the more risky setup with Sigmar's Herald. So on the first god skill tree we're only grabbing the basic Sigmar's Blessing with all the points leading up to it. Then next what we want to do is, here comes the weird build part. First, we are not grabbing Blessings of the Brave Mastered, and we're not grabbing Sigmar's Bastion Mastered. We're stopping at Blessing of the Brave Superior, grabbing the the Sigmar's Bastion basic version on the way, which we don't need because we'll be using Sigmar's Bastion Superior. And after that we're also getting Majestic Aura Mastered. Then we are forking off over here to get that 20 plus 40 crit damage and 5 plus 3 damage. And then we're taking Sigmar's Herald and continuing all the way to Divine Reprisal. So basically that's 20% more damage to taunted enemies, and this taunts all enemies around us and makes them take 30% more damage, so that's 50% more damage that those enemies would be taking. This gives us a little bit of crit chance and crit damage, but reduces our bulk chance and bulk damage, which we have other ways to deal with. And this also gives us crit chance and gives us damage reduction. So overall, this one is a little bit more defensive than this one, but not as damagey. It doesn't give us that 100% crit damage. And this one is like an alternative to Divine Judgment. I don't think that skill is balanced. I think this skill should be giving the same stuff Divine Judgment does. Because look at that. Nearby enemies deal less damage and take more damage. 20-20 on Master, then 15-15 and then 10-10. But when we move to this here, it's 20-10. So we're already losing 10% damage reduction. Then this is 15-10. Again, we're losing 5% damage reduction here. Then it's 10-10. So definitely the developers might have messed up here. And I hope they would consider making this 15-15 and this 20-20. So it would actually make some sense. And that's it for this God skill 3. Now let's show you some of the skills. And now here's the skills for the more standard kind of setup. Basically we're kind of using similar things to what I was using in the previous two versions of the build. Incisive Breakthrough here is just optional. You can put Swash or you can put Defensive Strike. I rarely find myself using this even at all. Sometimes I might not use it even once in a map. Justice of the Empire, heroic bread and butter of the build for both setups. It's the main source of damage. And now next we have Sigmar's Blessing, damage, bulk chance, energy regeneration. The energy regeneration is nice because it helps with break through the ranks. Keeping it up, we can charge with break through the ranks, and while channeling we can still use Sigmar's Blessing now. Just like this. You can see how I was using the God skill while channeling. Then Banner of the Empire Superior, you can replace that with Banner of the Order Superior if you want damage reduction. This helps with cooldowns, gives us damage and a little bit of energy cost, which we don't really care about when we're standing in one place. This one just to move around the map. Then this one, Sigmar's Bastion Mastered, as we already talked in the God skill segment. Crit chance and crit damage, and also pew-pew-pew healing beams when using Thrice-Blessed Copper medal. And then Duelist Chain Reaction, which you get here from the invasion. And again, if you're skipping through the video, I'm gonna say this here and then again in the other skill segment. When you're collecting rings in the invasions, collect them, do them if you're a new player at rank 10, that's the highest you can do as a new player. And when you reach this point and unlock this node and finish it, then you are able to collect the ring. Don't collect it at rank 10, go back to rank 1, collect the rings. Change to rank to collect the rings, and so on, going up your way. Otherwise, if you collect the ring at rank 10, then you can't go back to ranks 1 through 9 and collect the rings, they're gonna be locked. Or at least that's how it used to be before. I'm just not gonna test it and lose a reward as a result, in case it's been fixed. Next, Bastion against Corruption. There's two ways how you can do it. One is getting Mastered Bastion against Corruption and the basic Indestructible. And the other option is like I did it, and I think it's the better option, Bastion against Corruption, basic Indestructible Mastered. Because when we buff ourselves, Indestructible gives us 21% damage, and if I have more bulk damage and If I have more bog chance, that's gonna be more damage. So keep that in mind. Then Herald of the Empire Mastered gives us damage or damage reduction based on which banner we are using. Blessings of the Brave Mastered, as we said in the God skill segment, crit chance, crit damage based on how much bog chance, bog damage we've got. And then Divine Judgment Mastered. Nearby enemies deal less damage and take more damage. The mastered version is 20. If you want to downgrade it and just make it 15-15 to get some more points to maybe upgrade something else, you can do it. You can get 5 points to maybe upgrade this if you want to. Although I don't see why you would want to be upgrading this. Maybe when you're playing in a team you might want to upgrade this and down mode this one, because it's gonna at least apply this bonus to your teammates. And that's pretty much it. I think everything's straightforward. Now let's show you the second skill setup. And here are the skills for the risky Sigmar's Herald triple god skill setup. For this one you can see there is 9 points left. Those 9 points left you can spend on anything. For example, one thing I would strongly suggest testing would be using shielded charge for mobility instead of incisive breakthrough, because I never use incisive breakthrough. It's just a fewer there, just something to keep the SWAT taken. So you could try using shielded charge to help you move around like this. It's not gonna be that bad to have that extra mobility, and it also could give you, if you find one more point from someplace else, if you kind of downgrade indestructible, which I don't suggest, you could even get extra bog chance based on how many enemies you hit, but I think just the basic version is fine. Alternatively, you can try and maybe upgrade. What is there to upgrade? There's not much you can upgrade. You can upgrade Banner of the Empire, but I won't suggest it. So you can probably just upgrade the Incisive Breakthrough, or use Swash Mastered, or use Defensive Strike Mastered, or the superior version. Just pick any basic skill, or use Shielded Charge, the basic one. Anything's fine. You can even use Taunt. Because it's gonna give you some extra bog chance, which would translate into energy. So that's not a bad idea either, using Taunt. Okay. Apart from that, Justice of the Empire Heroic, Sigmar's Blessing, the basic one, Banner of the Empire Superior, it helps with cooldown and with the damage. Then Sigmar's Blessing, Sigmar's Herald, as seen in the God skill segment, it gives us 30% extra damage to the enemies that we taunt, and then taunted enemies from that passive here take 20% more damage. Then this one, crit chance, damage reduction, a little bit of extra damage, and we can stun enemies and spam pew-pew-pew beams like that to keep healing ourselves with the Thrice-Blessed Copper medal. Then we've got Indestructible Mastered, we've got Duelist Chain Reaction, which the Duelist Chain Reaction you need to do invasions for. You need to get it from here on the invasions. And when doing invasions, be careful not to end up collecting the rings on... For example, I suggest using rank 10, doing rank 10 on invasions if you've just started. If you're a new player, start from the highest rank you can, which is 10. And when you reach this and this note, when you complete those, don't click on the ring reward. Go back to rank 1, collect the ring, then upgrade to rank 2, collect the ring. Update to rank 3, collect the ring, and so on until rank 10. Otherwise, if you collected rank 10, you're only gonna get the rank 10 reward, and you're not gonna be able to go back to the previous ranks to collect it. Just a warning from me. But yeah, Duelist Chain Reaction is from here. Kind of went a little bit off topic, but that's helpful info for new players. Then Indestructible Mastered gives us extra bog chance, which translates into crit chance, which also translates into damage, and that is by using Blessing of the Brave. Crit chance is increased based on bog chance, crit damage increased based on bog damage, and of course also bog chance and damage kind of reduced to balance things out. Then Majestic Aura, we do more damage, but and also take 10% less damage. That's kind of it. Simple. It's very good for group play to be using this setup, I think. Then banners last much longer and UNO players are granted bonus based on the banner equipped. So with this banner it's gonna be 20% more damage, with the other banner 20% more damage reduction. You can always swap between this and this banner or this and this banner depending on what you need. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Now let's show you some options for the legendary ranks. This is what I was using. In fact, I didn't notice I had some spare points. I would suggest first invest into legendary reinforcement, then maybe legendary endurance. If you need more damage, legendary punishment. Especially for the lower levels you don't need that much damage reduction, so get legendary punishment. But first legendary reinforcement, get it to like 30% chance, max out the power. Once you have enough points, start investing into a second skill like endurance. Once you have enough points, invest into punishment or crushing based on whether you need damage or damage reduction. For lower levels, reinforcement plus punishment works great. Eventually you might want to even invest into healing once you have plenty of ranks, but you're probably far off from that for now. So let's show you now some info about the gear I suggest for the build. So here is the suggested gear. First of all, you want the Solland's Fate set, which gives you this bonus. Each successful walk has a chance to reduce all cooldowns, the Justice of the Empire skill is improved and no longer requires skill points to equip, which refers to this version of the skill. Then you want a Blade of Vengeance. If you don't have a good rolled Blade of Vengeance, alternatively you can try and maybe go for the more tanky option and use a Sacred Scepter, or you can use something like a Grudge Holder, which I'm gonna see if I can show you a Grudge Holder, a Grudge Settler, not Grudge Holder, a Grudge Settler. But if you're using a Grudge Settler, you might want to be using the other setup. The other setup, not the one that's the regular that doesn't have Sigmar's, what's it called, Sigmar's Herald, but the setup with Sigmar's Herald, because Sigmar's Herald taunts the enemies around you, and that would be a good synergy. It's not gonna give you as much damage as a Blade of Vengeance, for example, because a Blade of Vengeance, you can see, gives you up to 300%. Actually, no, it's up to 200% damage, but up to 30% damage reduction. That's why I think Blade of Vengeance overall is a better one, if you can keep the stacks up. And if you have a good rolled one, use it. But if you don't, the Grudge set were definitely a nice alternative option. And for survivability, of course, the Sacred Scepter is not bad. Gives you extra 50% more healing, which synergizes well with the Thrice-Blessed Copper medal, and you also get 20% more damage reduction, which is not bad. Magnus Gift is the one thing I would not recommend using. It's just not doesn't go well with this build. Then for a shield, you use anything you've got good rolls on. More about what are good rolls in a moment. Use anything you've got. You won't be using your Shield Smash unless you use a Pavise Avenger. If you use a Pavise Avenger, you might wanna squeeze in some Shield Smashes, but I think the Pavise Avenger is better suited for a Pistolier setup. So my suggestion is just get whatever drops with good rolls, and that's it. And then you want Thrice-Blessed Copper medal because it's crucial for the survivability. It heals you every time you use a God skill, which means every time you use Sigmar's Blessing, or on the other setup when you use Sigmar's Herald as well, and also when you use Sigmar's Bastion. But not only on the first activation, but each of those has a chance to give you 20% HP, which means the more HP you have, of course, the more it would end up healing you in a number, but always 20%. Now, for the rings, I've been using Fortification and Fortitude, but if you don't need that much damage reduction, you can get something like a Purple Signet that's decently rolled. If you want more cooldowns, which I think you wouldn't, not now that we have so much from the passives, you might wanna use Retribution. And then there is the ring that gives you HP but and healing. Where was it? I'm not sure, I've got it here. HP and healing. Resurgence. Resurgence also goes well with that build. So there's few ways, few options to get some good stuff out of the setup. It's gonna be up to you which one you wanna use. There's also one ring which I don't have, which gives you 50% damage reduction as long as you have energy. I'm not sure how well that would fit, but maybe with this energy regeneration you would be able to keep up the energy regenerated. If you can't, you might have to use Incisive Breakthrough, which would result in losing some damage, because every time you're using Incisive Breakthrough means you're probably not using Justice of the Empire or the healing. So I don't think that's gonna work well. From the invasion rings, I think Old Ring of Resonance might go very well to keep stunning the enemy, so a good rolled one would go a long way. As for alternative choices for the amulets, I wouldn't suggest taking any others. I would suggest just sticking to this one. Even if it's badly rolled, it's gonna help you survive until you get a good rolled one. So now for the good rolls. On a helmet, cooldown reduction, high priority, highest priority. Second priority, HP, armor, and then you might want to get other things like resistance to damage over time, or energy, or health regeneration, and things like that. Just fill the rest of the slots. You just want those three things first. Then you want things like on the breastplate and the leg armor, you want things like the most important is HP. The second most important is armor. After that, the rest is just fillers. So try to get the highest possible HP and the highest possible armor afterwards. This applies to the legs as well. For the boots, you can get speed bonus. So maybe try to get priority number 1 HP, priority number 2 armor, and priority number 3 maybe speed. The rest again is fillers, resistance, health regeneration, and so on. On the gauntlets, that's the one piece you can get damage and crit damage. Prioritize the damage over the crit damage. The crit damage is not that much, it's like around 40-ish max %. So 3000 on a red item or 6 plus 1000 on a green item definitely goes a long way when it comes to fat damage. So fat damage priority number 2, priority number 1. Priority number 2 is HP, and then priority number 3 I would say armor. And then as priority number 4 you might wanna put the crit damage. And after that just fill with whatever, like resistance to damage over time, HP regeneration, energy, or whatever. I don't think you can get health drain on gauntlets, as far as I know. Which brings us to the weapon rolls and the shield rolls, and then the accessory rolls. For the weapon, you cannot get crit chance, but you can get crit damage, which can be pretty high. So you can see some differences here. So first of all, priority number 1, cooldown reduction and damage. You want those two things, flat damage as high as possible and cooldown reduction as high as possible. Priority number 2 I think would be things like HP, armor piercing, and health drain, and crit damage. You can see I've decided to experiment with one that doesn't give me as much, doesn't give me crit damage, but gives me more flat damage and a little bit more cooldown reduction. But I was using the Blade of Vengeance for some of the footage. That's on the right side, the one with the crit damage. For the other footage I was using the one on the left hand side. Of course the rest is fillers, but ideally my perfect roll would be cooldown reduction, damage, HP, crit damage, health drain, and armor piercing. I think would be my perfect rolls, which rounds it up to 6. For the shield you want crit chance because you can get crit chance on it, and you want cooldown reduction as well. It doesn't go as high as the blade, So even if you skip a little bit of cooldown here, it's not gonna be the end of the world now that we have so much from the god skills. Then you want flat damage. Then you want things like block chance, block damage to be high, and ideally if you can get some HP. So let's see what I could change on this shield. First, cost reduction, counter attack damage and energy I would change for crit damage and HP. Crit damage is not that important on the shield, but it's nice to have it if you can get it. So yeah, I would say crit chance and damage priority number 1, cooldown and HP number 2, and then crit damage priority number 3. Whereas you always get block chance and block damage, but you want to try and get something with high amounts of those, because the build gets crit chance and crit damage based on those. And now there's one thing I want to mention about amulets and rings. Amulets can get armor, rings cannot. But what you want to prioritize on all 3 of them is crit chance priority number 1 together with flat damage. If you can't get cooldown reduction, that's fine, you already have a lot from different places like the set bonus and the god skill 3. But try to get, if you can, as priority number 2 cooldown reduction and HP, and that brings it to 4 stats. Now you can decide on the amulet to maybe get armor, or maybe get armor piercing, or health drain, or crit damage, whatever you think would fit best. The same thing applies for the rings, except without the armor. So I think that's pretty clear. Now quickly about the blessings. Try to keep your HP around 300 or 350,000. Even if you lose some damage, I think it's better to have some more HP. You can see I've got this blessing, this one. The 6 times green, you can't link when it's the same, so 6 times green gives you up to 20,000 HP. So on some pieces you can see I'm using damage and HP, on other pieces I'm using just HP. So you might wanna kind of configure this to match. Eventually when you get green items with HP rolls, you're gonna have more HP and you can sacrifice some of the HP from blessings. But when it comes to damage, you want to use either this one to get 8000 HP and 3,600 damage, or this one, the more balanced version, which gives you 6000 HP, 4000 damage, or even more damage can be obtained this way, 4.48 thousand damage and 4000 HP. That's the 3 things you might wanna work with. I would suggest focus more on the HP, not on the damage. If you can survive, you can deal damage, and there's plenty of it, even if you don't focus on the damage blessings that much. So apart from that, I think everything should be clear, so that should be it. Now here is some more gameplay and me explaining maybe how I do my rotation, in case those of you were wondering. The most important thing how to play the build is, of course, find a group of enemies, the more the better. The more enemies around you, the more you're gonna get hit, and the easier it will be to build those 10 stacks from Blade of Vengeance. Once you find that group, plant your banner and use your god skill with the regular setup. You're gonna be using the 2 god skills. With the other setup you're gonna be using 3 god skills, and then immediately afterwards just start spamming Justice of the Empire. If the banner ends before you kill the enemy, which probably won't be happening much, you might wanna recast it. And what you do is, while you're spamming the meteors, you are squeezing in some healing beams with Sigmar's Bastion. So you can see how now I'm spamming meteors, at the same time there's those pew-pew-pew beams every now and then, and when my other god skill, the one on my number 1, is ready, I'm using it. The same would be applying to the other setup, but there I would be just using two god skills and I wouldn't have that much mobility. But as I said at the start of the video, you can rework the skills to squeeze in, break through the ranks in the setup still, just to get rid of that basic attack, which probably I will be testing today on stream. So it's not that difficult, but the most important thing would be to keep grouping up the enemies in big batches. When there's 1-2 enemies left, even if it's elites, sometimes it's better to just pull those elites into a bigger group of enemies a bit further down the road, rather than just standing there and trying to kill that one enemy. So yeah, overall, when you're doing upgraded relic hunts, you might notice that sometimes it's a little bit difficult to keep those 50 stacks if you stand in one place. When there's just an elite enemy left, you might end up losing those 50 multiplier stacks. So in cases like those, you would really want to do that, to just keep pulling the elites towards more enemies, so you can keep killing enemies to keep that times 50 multiplier at the bottom. And you're not completely immortal, you can face tank a lot of stuff, but you can also still die, so you have to be careful, things like that might happen. Here I just killed the boss, but after the boss I'm not sure why. I guess I took a lot of damage from the boss and the Minotaur behind me, and that was that death. So in a moment you're gonna see the other setup, and I'm gonna explain a little bit about that synergy. But overall you can see they're not that different. You're gonna see that they're not that different. And now here it is a little bit from the other build, another boss fight, which if you're not careful you can die on. For example, those AoE fields hit us. Sometimes you may not be able to take it in unless you've been stacking a lot of damage reduction. And I kind of played it a little bit riskier, not as much damage reduction as I used to have on those builds before in the 1.0 and 2.0 versions. Here you're gonna see that there isn't that nice synergy, as I said. The Sigmar's Herald god skill taunts the enemies and keeps damaging those enemies, pulsating with those waves around you, and taunted enemies also take more damage, so as long as you can keep the enemies nearby, you can get that damage done. Of course this enemy is kind of annoying because he keeps knocking back, but overall I think that the damage numbers I've been seeing solo with just my own buffs were kind of equal, like around 20 something, close to 30 million damage max on the Justice of the Empire with both builds. So damage wise they seem to have been kind of the same. You just have to decide which build you like more, which setup you like more. You can modify it, of course, modify the god skills, modify the skills, and let me know in the comments how you did your own version of the build. And I might even experiment and test your version to see if I like it more, because for all we know you might find a much more pleasant way to play the setup. Overall, you have survivability and you have damage in the build. It works well for solo, it works even better for team. I think that this version, the one with Sigmar's Herald, would actually be the recommended for team play. If you've enjoyed this video and want to be notified for when I upload more content like this for this game or other wooters of the hack and slash or shooter wooter variety, you could subscribe to my channel to get those content updates, and you can get notified by clicking on the bell button as well. So hope you enjoyed it, hope everything was clear. If something wasn't, share your comments, questions, etc. in the section below. Keep it cool, folks. Thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.